Good evening. Welcome to the first Provost Conversation on Online Learning of this academic year. The Provost Conversations on Online Learning feature public talks by leading experts on the future of education. And through such talks, we hope to share knowledge to enrich and enhance teaching and learning not only online but also on campus. Back in April 2013, we invited Daphne Koller, the co-founder of Coursera, to campus in this very room. We are pleased to have Jeff Maggioncalda, the CEO of Coursera, with us today to share what has changed over the past 5.5 years, what's new, and what to expect in the future. Jeff joined Coursera a year and a half ago after serving 18 years as the CEO of Financial Engines, a company co-founded by economist and Nobel Prize winners William Sharpe. And prior to that, Jeff worked for McKinsey and Cornerstone Research. Jeff holds a bachelor's degree in economics and English and an MBA from Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming Jeff to Columbia University.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. It's a thrill to be here, and I feel like I almost have to apologize for the enthusiasm with which I'm about to present this talk. Coursera is now 6 years old. I've been here for a year and a half. It has been extraordinary being in Europe, India, Latin America. Last night I was in Moscow. It is a global phenomenon, what is happening with education around the world, especially higher education, and I'll say adult education, which is not always the same thing as higher education. And what I want to talk a little bit about is these sort of tectonic forces that are creating the need for what Coursera does, and the way that our business and our products and our partnerships are evolving to meet these needs. I will have some data, I will have many insights, and there are many questions yet to be answered where I will guess maybe at the answers, but we just don't have them right now. So I like to say that the future of work and the future of learning are converging. And they're converging because fundamentally the world is changing at a faster pace than it has ever changed before, driven mostly by globalization and by technology. You have things like the availability of data, elastic computing power, artificial intelligence, which is both a function of computing power as well as data, as well as an evolving understanding of how to create efficient neural networks. And you have things like robotics and sensors. We're looking at, I was just with one of the largest companies in Russia last night, and they are deeply troubled by the almost inevitability that self-driving cars and trucks will dramatically change the economic landscape for country after country after country, not to mention the robotics, manufacturing, even the automation of white-collar jobs. So it's incredible what we're seeing. And so because the world's changing so quickly, skills are becoming outdated, tasks are becoming automated and replicated, and the ability to do a job and add value in an economy will be dependent on an ability to learn and develop skills in a world where skills are obsoleting very quickly. There's a book I was reading before I took this job, Thank You for Being Late by Thomas Friedman. It's a great book. I really recommend it. It talks a lot about how fast the world's changing, and there's a chart that he actually grabbed from someone at Google that basically characterizes our point in time. We are here at a point in time where the pace of innovation and change in technology has outstripped humans' ability to adapt, especially institutions like governments, arguably institutions like educational institutions, but also things like gender identities, jobs, parenting styles. I mean, things are changing very, very rapidly. And what he says is that it is imperative that institutions adapt and that we are able to learn faster and govern smarter to help humans stay up in a world where change is happening so quickly. So I think fundamentally what gives rise to the need for Coursera is a world changing faster and faster. This is happening at a time when various consultants will say different things. McKinsey in 2017 came out with, I think, a very articulate report on the impact of automation. they expect about 400 million jobs to be impacted or potentially eliminated due to technology that exists today. So they looked across all the jobs, and not just the job, they looked at it by region, by industry, by job, and by job activity. And they sort of did a time and motion study, and they looked at all the technology that existed in 2017, and they said how many of these activities could be replicated or substantially automated using technology that exists today. They put the number at about 400 million, and you can see it's about half of jobs in most countries will be impacted by technology. This is happening at a time where we expect about 300 million people to be entering the workforce in the next 10 years. And it's not evenly distributed around the world. 100 million entering the workplace in India. There will be almost 1 billion working age people in India within 15 years. You look at China, about 60 million, 40 million in Brazil, about 39 million in the US. Interestingly, I was just in Russia giving this talk. In Russia and in places like Japan, there are some economies where the working age population is decreasing. So Russia expects to see a decline of 10% in their workforce. This comes at a time where they've been bumping out the retirement age because the ability of the government to sustain people through a longer lifespan is putting tremendous financial strains on their benefit and social welfare programs. And so they're facing a world where they cannot provide Social Security so early in life, which almost by definition means someone's got to pay the bills, which means that individuals have to work for a longer period of time in a world where the skills are obsoleting more quickly. So they're really interested in how do you educate and re-educate and keep agile an older population that the government cannot necessarily take care of in a way that they used to in the past. So the bad news is there's a lot of dislocation that's happening and that will continue to happen. And what I personally worry about is the dislocation that's happening in terms of social fabric, the kind of tribalism that we're seeing, the kind of fear and anger and outrage and resentment when people around the world can see the differences between people, and especially differences in economic opportunity. I think it is imperative, and by the way, I was with the World Bank talking to the leaders in the Middle East, North Africa segment. They're talking about unemployment rates north of 50% among young males who are entering sort of working age, and they're deeply concerned about the stability of fundamental institutions if they cannot provide the skills and jobs to people that otherwise might find other ways to employ their time. So there's a high level of urgency around the world, much more so than in the United States. The good news is, through technology, we can make very high quality levels of education available. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how, at least at Coursera, how we're doing that. So at Coursera, we like to talk about our offering as a platform for a global campus. We basically bring together 3 types of stakeholders: learners, educators, and employers. And we think each of these 3 are all really important for our business model and for solving this problem. So to date, we have about 35 million learners around the world who registered on Coursera, and they come to what we say is learn and prosper. It is definitely the learning piece for the vast majority of adults who are very busy, working and taking care of kids and trying to have some fun. They're trying to learn the things that will help them get better economic opportunity or to help them hold on to their jobs. We have about 170 universities around the world. So just because it's very fresh in my mind, we have 8 of the top universities in Russia. We have about 11 universities in Latin America. We have many tens of universities in North America and in Europe. Our biggest concentration of partners is in North America and Europe. And increasingly, we are inviting onto the platform industry partners. These are corporations who are authoring courses and teaching folks usually more applied skills, and they're teaching folks how to use technology platforms. So our largest industry partner is Google. They've authored more than 30 courses on Google Cloud Platform. They're in a titanic war with Amazon and Microsoft and IBM and now Alibaba and now Yandex. The cloud wars are in full force. And most technology companies are realizing that in order to keep up, almost all business models are, not almost all, many business models that are emerging now are ecosystem platform business models that require a set of talented developers to understand how to develop on that platform. And the value of the technology platform is related to the size of the developer audience an ecosystem that understands and supports that platform. So learning has become part of the product offering for many technology companies whose pace of innovation is outpacing people's ability to learn these new technology platforms. So it has become business critical to educate a world of developers as well. And then finally, on the employer piece, Coursera launched Coursera for Business 2 years ago. We like to say that we help employers transform talent. So within 2 years, over 1,500 companies have hired Coursera to offer our partners courses to their employees at work who are trying to learn the skills in digital marketing, data science, technology, business, management, leadership, global workforce, supply chain automation, et cetera. And they don't have the money or the expertise to author all this content themselves. The world is, the learning need is too broad and it's changing too quickly for companies to have their corporate universities where they produce all the content. It's like, hey, Coursera, you guys have 2,900 courses from the best universities around the world in almost every language. My employees are all around the world. How about I just sort of rent courses from you and make them available to our employees? And so this business has been growing very, very rapidly. And we like to think that Coursera really is just a platform provider that helps these three stakeholders in this learning ecosystem create and exchange value with each other to identify and solve problems that we might not have seen and we might not have been able to solve on our own. So we're really trying to enable learners to learn and prosper, educators to teach the world, and enterprises to transform their talent. So in terms of the global population, the top 5 countries represented on Coursera are the US, followed by India, followed by China, Mexico, and Brazil. And you see that the highest growth rates are generally in emerging economies. 47% of our learners are in developing economies. Among the employers, we have 1,500 employers who hired us. They span the range across countries, geographies, industries. They're often the larger companies who cannot keep up with the speed and scale of education that's now being asked of them through their digital transformation initiatives that you hear basically every major company in every major country is talking about digital transformation. And many people, most people, even I, don't know exactly what that means, and we're all kind of discovering it together. But it has something to do with a lot of data, a lot of compute power, and new ways of communicating and marketing to customers who are changing their behavior and purchasing patterns very rapidly, and competitors who are emerging from places that these companies had never anticipated. So customers and competitors are moving quickly. That's what's giving the real pressure on these companies to say, we have to keep up. And then our partners, I mentioned, are mostly in the US and Europe, but they do span a global range. And what we're doing on Coursera, our partners are driving a lot of this innovation, but it's been really exciting to see. So again, we like to think of Coursera as a platform for your global campus. In the early stages, a lot of our university partners came to Coursera because they knew that on Coursera they could reach audiences that before they couldn't reach. So reach is a really big part of it. A couple years ago when we announced the Coursera for Business, there was a new audience, which is learners at work that our educational partners could reach. So that was kind of what it started as, is come to Coursera to author courses if you're a university, and we'll help deliver those courses to audiences that otherwise might be more difficult to reach. What's been happening, though, is our partners have been pressing us, and we've been very open to it, to say, how else could we use this platform? So we just announced a pilot program called Coursera for Partners, where our partners are saying a lot of our students, especially the ones just coming into undergrad, have grown up with a very different educational experience in high school. They're learning a lot of things from YouTube. They're on their phones and computers all the time. This idea that you sit in a big lecture hall is feeling a little less appropriate for these newer learning audiences. We want to put our MOOCs on campus. We'd like to be able to offer our MOOCs to our students at no cost. And so we said, fine, if you've authored more than 20 MOOCs, you can now use Coursera for your own student population. So my daughter is a sophomore at Duke, and Duke has authored, I don't know, maybe 70 courses. And those courses are now all available to all the students, staff, and faculty on Duke's campus. We now have about 10 universities, I'll mention them in the next slide, who are doing this as well. So it is absolutely a world where online and on campus are blending together. Right now, it's mostly open content, not for credit, but you'll see we're doing full degrees and even 4-credit degree components that we think are very interesting for both educators and for learners. So we started doing this on campus, and then our partner said, you know what? Everyone talks about lifelong learning. One of the only ways we seem to really engage our alumni is basically through sports and sort of fundraising. What if we became learning partners for our alumni for the rest of their lives? How can we continue to teach and be engaged with bilaterally in both directions, helping our alumni teach our students and helping us teach our alumni what's happening in the world? So we've extended the Coursera for Partners program to also include, at no cost, and this is just a pilot program, the availability of our partners' MOOCs to not only their faculty, students, and staff, but also their alums. And you can probably imagine this has been very well received. And then some of the schools said, well, you know what? We also have this executive education department in the business schools where we go out to companies. So it's great that you have 1,500 companies, but we have companies that we work with as well. We don't really have a very scalable way of delivering these executive education programs. And so could we use Coursera to actually create more scale at lower cost and in many ways a higher level of convenience for our corporate partners? And so now we are working with our partners to say, how can you use Coursera to actually do your corporate outreach? And then we have a case which is now emerging in more than one partner where they said, there's a program, for instance, with Coursera, which is called Coursera for Refugees, where we make our courses available to refugee populations who don't have access to good educational opportunities at no cost. And Duke came to us and said, you know, a lot of our courses are being taken by refugees in Germany. We are going to be sending Duke students to Germany for the summer to actually help instruct refugees using our MOOCs. So the ability to do social outreach and to really scale the incredible value and opportunity and privilege that exists in the top universities is another really promising part of being able to use technology to take this really, really valuable asset for the world, and instead of just having it contained on a few square acres, actually project that value and make it more available to more populations who really need that kind of help. So there's a lot of interest in using Coursera for social impact among our participants, our partners. And then we also have some partners saying, wow, this platform thing's pretty interesting. If I could take these MOOCs and offer it to my students and to alums and social impact and businesses, I'd like to develop a more diverse pipeline of students coming to campus. Especially in the United States, there's a high disparity in different populations, the quality of education people are getting in high school. And they're saying, could we use Coursera to author courses specifically designed for certain populations of less advantaged high school students who maybe didn't have 20 or 30 AP courses available to them, to help them learn things so that when they get, A, to increase the chance that they're qualified to come to campus, and B, when they get to campus, reduce that disparity that exists so often with first-generation college students where they just haven't had the kind of training and available resources educationally that many others have had. So using Coursera as a platform for incoming students has also been something that's been very exciting. And then recently we've been doing something called collaborations. So what's happened is universities have said, you know what, we'd like to work with other Coursera partners and actually combine and co-create content, especially in different regions. So there's an initiative that we just announced a couple months ago that was born from a trip I took to Latin America in December. I met with the rectors of Tec de Monterrey, which is kind of the MIT of Mexico, and UNANDES in Colombia, and Católica de Chile in Chile. They're three of the top universities in Latin America. They're all Coursera partners. They've authored many courses. And they said, Jeff, we want to collaborate across countries in Latin America. We think that the educational infrastructure in Latin America could be dramatically improved if only we had an ability to collaborate ourselves and to make this available to many other educational institutions who don't have the quality of education of a Tec de Monterrey or a UNANDES. So they created something called La Triada, the three. And what they're doing is they're using Coursera to combine course catalogs. So it's a version of Coursera for partners where each student on each campus has the full collection of all courses across all three campuses. And not only are they just combining the courses, they're also now collaborating on authoring custom courses across these campuses with an eye towards making these courses available through other institutions that don't have the kind of faculty and resources that they have to sort of up-level the entire educational system of countries across Latin America. So we're very excited about that. It's only a pilot process, pilot program right now, this Coursera for Partners, but it's been really quite remarkable, the amount of interest. Here are the participating pilots, and there's a lot of excitement. So we're really thrilled about the ways that our partners can collaborate and reinvent the way that we educate the world. A lot of folks are familiar with MOOCs. That was started in 2012, massively open online courses. In 2014, we bundled up courses and called them specializations. They're more about mastering a full skill instead of just learning something new in a MOOC. We charge a subscription fee for those specializations. That's a large part of what's been driving our revenues. And the company has been growing spectacularly in the last year over year. We have grown our revenues more than 50%. So for folks who are like, oh, MOOCs aren't working, you know, they're actually working in some really interesting ways, not the least of which is when you bundle them together and put a credential in something like data science or computer science, that's a pretty valuable credential that employers do recognize and learners want to buy. All the courses are still available for free. If you want to watch the videos, virtually every course is still available for free if you just want to learn watch the videos. But the assessment and the certificate are not free. You have to pay for that. We also have launched degrees. These are usually $20,000 to $25,000. We now have 12 master's degrees, 11 master's degrees and 1 bachelor degree, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then master track certificates, which are like degree modules that you can buy for $3,000 or $4,000. It's a piece of a degree with open admissions, has the full degree experience, and can be used as a basis for admissions into a degree program, where if you get into the degree program, the credit would count towards the degree. So essentially, people can earn degrees in modules. You don't have to buy the whole thing at once. If you look at some of our top universities across the different programs that I mentioned, Michigan, Penn, and Duke are among the most aggressive in trying new things that we're doing on Coursera. A lot of the innovation has been driven by our partners and by businesses and by learners, but not necessarily by Coursera. Columbia is one of our earliest partners. Although there's a fairly modest course catalog, some of the most popular courses are from Columbia. And we'll actually have a slide on that in just a moment. And you can see that there's a different rate of adoption among some of these innovation programs. I mentioned degrees. In 2016, we announced with the University of Illinois 3 master's degrees. A master's in business administration, a master's in accounting, and a master's in computer science with a focus on data science. And then we announced last year a master's in computer science. At our March conference with our partners, we announced the ASU Masters in Computer Science, Global Masters in Public Health from Imperial College of London. I think they're the 8th ranked university in the world. University of Michigan has been an early partner of ours. They're doing a master's in public health and a master's of applied data science. University of London, a bachelor's in computer science. They see a global opportunity for training computer scientists around the world. And then we just announced in July a degree from University of Pennsylvania. So they have a very popular program on campus called the Master's in Computers and Information Technology. This is a master's degree in computers for people who did not get a computer science bachelor's degree. And there is just a huge number of people from almost all past generations who got really good education, but computer science just wasn't such an important topic. And so they're thinking about, how do I complement my skill set and credential set from a top university in a field like computer science? So we've seen really amazing demand for that degree, which we'll be launching next year. And then we just announced in August a global MBA from Macquarie University in Sydney. So really across business, technology, and data science primarily, with now a movement towards healthcare, where we see a huge need for education in healthcare as well. We're seeing both at one end of the spectrum, the MOOCs becoming popular and continuing to grow, but also at the other end, degrees, which will increasingly be moving online. And I like to say, when people think about MOOCs, they're definitely a way to educate folks. They're also an amazing entryway into other types of learning and credentials, whether those are specializations or master track certificates. These are parts of master degrees or full degrees. It's a great way for someone to engage in the topic, meet a professor, learn about the school, decide whether they're good at it, enjoy it, and then if they want to, they can decide to move up to higher value and more rigorous credentials. About 50% of the students in our degree programs actually were open, free MOOC learners. So one of the things about online degrees is they're typically very costly, and the acquisition cost is usually $10,000 to $15,000 per student. Essentially, from a business model perspective, this is like a freemium business model, where our partners are putting MOOCs out there, very valuable content that teach very valuable things. They're free. People all come in and they decide, hey, I like this, I want to learn more about this, and I'd like to maybe build a career on this, and they can decide from that free entry point that maybe I want to buy something and participating in a learning experience that's a bit more rigorous. So I think that MOOCs have a very positive future, and I think they're going to be contributing to a business model in a gateway kind of method. I want to just quickly show you a little video, it's 90 seconds, that the University of Illinois did for their MBA, just to show you kind of what the learning experience looks like. Because it's built on MOOCs, but it's using technology in much more interactive and engaging ways.
We wanted to do something that would democratize education and also to make a degree that was available for people to be able to work around their lives so they can continue to work, continue to raise families. Our online IMBA, it's actually the same degree as any other way of earning an MBA from the University of Illinois. And so you're a full-fledged member of the community. When you graduate, you're one of our alums, and we love all our alums the same.
The IMBA basically stood out because of the fact that for the cost, the $22,000, the faculty, the flexibility in the program.
I don't think I would be able to have finished any other program because after giving birth, it was really super hard, and having something that's based on certificates in a modular structure make the entire difference for me.
I was shocked at how much it felt as good or better than when I was sitting in class in my undergraduate days. The professor's right there looking into the camera. Everyone has their cameras on their computers. There's a chat feature so you can also type in a question and the professor can answer your question that way.
Office hours are another opportunity to get beyond just sort of information transfer and into more of the coaching aspect.
I think the cool thing is that you can truly participate from wherever you are. These systems work on your desktop, on your cell phone, so it's device agnostic. Getting my MBA makes me feel empowered because I don't need to stop being myself. I don't need to stop working. I don't need to stop being a mother. I don't need to stop having my life. And that is everything.
So there are a lot of people who don't have master's degrees, cannot afford to quit their jobs, cannot afford to move their families, but who would love the opportunity to actually have a really high quality educational experience, who are coming to Coursera to work with our partners to do more than just MOOCs. And I mean, I get really excited about it because I think it's a chance to, as Dean Brown said, to really democratize something that is so valuable that such a small percentage of the world has ever had access to. So I think this is what technology does. This is what innovation does. I think it has a chance to really provide a hugely positive impact on the world. In terms of our degrees, we have 45 countries represented by degree enrollment students. I won't read through all this. I will say that the demand for degrees on Coursera from top universities is just unbelievable. In the first 6 months after the announcement with our partners of those new degree programs, we've had over 90,000 expressions of interest from people around the world saying, hey, I never thought I could get a master's degree like one of the participants in that video. I never thought I could get an MBA because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't quit my job. I had to take care of my family. It is now available at an accessible price, an accessible medium, without sacrificing the quality of the instruction, of the collegiality and your classmates, and also the quality of the brand of the issuer of the degree. So this is something that we're very excited about. In terms of what our learners are learning on Coursera, there are a wide range of topics, but the concentration, probably not surprisingly, are those courses that are closely related to job market demand for those skills taught by those courses. So mostly you can see we have business, computer science, data science. Those are our largest disciplines or domains in terms of enrollment. In terms of the financial piece, who's actually paying for courses, it is skewed even more dramatically towards business, technology, and data science. So there's a lot on social science, arts, and humanities. Those are great. People really like them, but they usually don't pay much for those, if anything at all. In terms of who's using it, you can see the mode for age is 30 to 39, a concentration of younger people. The app usage is definitely growing. Interestingly, when we looked at the app usage, the mobile usage among our degree students, it was actually 80% of degree students are using the mobile device. And you're like, wow, they all clearly can afford computers, what's going on? They're almost all working. And they said, the only time I actually have to earn an MBA within 2 years is if I spend my hour or two commuting, watching the videos, if I spend my lunch breaks, preparing, if I do this before dinner or when the kids go to bed, on weekends, I'll try to get this in. So this idea that the educational experience largely, at least in terms of the amount of hours of learning happens on a mobile device, is incredibly important. And it's really easy for people to say, oh, lifelong learning. It takes time. It takes time. And so you've got to look at people's habits and you've got to look at their lives. And it might be wonderful if everybody could come to campus. But at a certain point in life, it's just not feasible. And it's not even feasible to sit in front of a computer for the number of hours that you need to learn the amount of information that's required to get an advanced degree. You can see that it skews male versus female. In India, that's 80-20 male-female. In Russia, it's 55-45. So across countries, there's a different representation of males and females, but overall, on a global basis, that's the gender breakdown. In terms of employment status, you can see that the vast majority of people are employed. They're usually looking to learn new skills to advance their careers. In terms of topics in business, management and communications are the two big ones. People trying to figure out better ways of leading teams, evaluating performance, having influential presentations and communications with other folks. There are some specialty disciplines as well. In technology, software engineering, operating systems are the big ones. A lot of it's how to program in Python, how to use R, how to do things that employers are now looking for when they're posting job opportunities. And then in data science, statistical programming and machine learning are all the rage. I think that country after country realizes that the impact on our society because of data and especially the utilization of data in predictive models is going to be tremendous. One of our founders, Andrew Ng, who's very famous for AI, is a computer scientist and was at Stanford when he founded Coursera, says that AI is the new electricity. It will change the way we live our lives. It will change the way society functions. And I think that's probably not an understatement. So in terms of Columbia, we've had 1.5 million enrollments in those courses authored by 9 courses authored by Columbia, over 1 million unique learners. 13 courses. And a lot of these courses actually offer financial assistance. So you can get the certificate and do the assessments even if you don't pay anything through a financial aid program. Overall, we have 900 courses, 300 specializations, and 12 degrees. With Columbia, we've had 9 courses and 1 specialization. But we've seen quite a bit of interest in Columbia content, probably not surprisingly, around the world. So here are some of our top selling, top enrollments of courses that have been authored by Columbia. And we have a number that are in the pipeline too that we're very excited about, including one, is it machine learning and finance that we're doing? Financial engineering. Yeah, which will be coming that we're pretty excited about. In the top 10 courses on Coursera, 8 of them have machine learning in the title. I mean, there's a lot of demand for machine learning. And so to sort of summarize, the world is moving very, very rapidly, especially in other countries where risk aversion is lower and experimentation is higher and the sense of urgency is higher. You're seeing just an incredible amount of experimentation. So we think that this whole idea, which I think is a false dichotomy between online and on campus, is going away. Even today it's going away. The students on campus today, if they're anything like my daughter at Duke, she might be sitting in a classroom, but when she goes back to her dorm, she's on the net. She's doing all kinds of things to learn the material that's being taught on campus. With Coursera for partners, MOOCs are becoming a very important, not textbook substitute, but a really important piece of the on-campus pedagogy. I think that's going to rapidly grow because we're not charging anything for that. That's just part of what we want to do as a way of providing an incentive for our partners to author more courses and to also get Coursera in front of students before they graduate from undergrad. This whole idea that you earn a full degree and that's it, either you have a degree or you have no formal education, we think is going to be blurring and is blurring rapidly with MOOCs and specializations. And Udacity has nano degrees, and edX has micromasters, and we have master tracks. This idea of sub-degree credentials, I think, really has a lot of merit because a degree takes a lot of time. It's a huge time investment. It's a huge cost investment. And a lot of folks don't have that time. I don't think degrees are going away at all. But I think slowly, and we're already seeing it, there was a Wall Street Journal article just a few days ago saying that MBAs are seeing reduced numbers of applicants because the cost, the ROI, and the lack of convenience of having to try to go to campus is just not really, not working for a lot of students. So we do think that there's a world of a full spectrum of educational opportunities underpinned by technology with different levels of credential value from different issuers of those credentials. One thing I haven't really talked much about is when you learn online, there's a data trace of the entire thing, and you can build some, you can imagine, a company started by Andrew Ng and Daphne Cole, two computer scientists at Stanford, and the first courses were on machine learning. You could bet we were thinking about how data and machine learning might influence the way that people learn down the road. One little feature, two little things I'll sort of mention that are kind of interesting examples of data. One is this course helper. So as you're going through a course, we're watching all the questions you get right and wrong. We're looking at all the other folks who went through that course and got similar questions right or wrong. We have a taxonomy of difficulty, skill domain, et cetera. And then we look at the upcoming test and we say, of students who performed the way you have so far, who passed the test successfully, here were the videos that they reviewed and the pieces of the lecture that they reviewed. And we have a personalized study guide for every student for certain courses that really helps you figure out where do you need a little bit more support in order to learn based on your particular learning path. Another thing that we have for our degree students is what we call a learner at risk model. So we're starting to get pretty good signals on when a learner is at risk of attrition, either falling behind, getting a poor grade, deciding to stop out of the program. And we think that the ability to spot where students need help, where they might be struggling with the topic, either providing more resources, or providing additional information, or linking to a MOOC with some of the background basic information about how to master that concept, we think will be a huge benefit to students who maybe are trying to master a new domain with which they have less familiarity and are struggling. So using machine learning to provide personalized dating, better student services and support, and also on the cost structure side, doing more scalable teaching and assessment so it becomes more affordable to more people is going to be a very big thing. And then, of course, lifelong learning is important. And to me, when we talk about Coursera for Business, it's like, look, if we believe that people need to learn for the rest of their lives, and we generally think that people are going to have to work for most of their lives, it means they're going to have to learn at work. And so thinking about not just preparing people for work, but all these people who are working, who are graduating from Columbia and any other school, they're going to have to learn for the rest of their lives. And so figuring out how to really create a learning experience that works for people who are working, we think is a really big part of where we need to go in the future. So those are just some of the things. We have about 15 minutes, and I'd be happy to take any questions, and hopefully I can provide some answers. Thanks. Yeah.
So we do have 15 minutes for questions. Maybe I'll start with two. And I didn't give him a clue on these questions
He said
beforehand.
with a wry grin.
So the first question has to do with your growing dependence on degree programs and certificates. Mm-hmm. How do you see the future in terms of that dependence? And also, how do you react to folks who now compare you more and more with OPMs, online program management providers like to you?
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a sense where it would be dependence, in a sense maybe financial dependence if it becomes very successful. Dependence that you have because you become really successful, I'll take that kind of dependence. Fundamentally, when we think about the importance of degrees, unlike an OPM, which is really, I think, trying to manufacture an online version of existing product and just kind of sell it through direct sales, we see ourselves more as a platform, and we see degrees as one in a continuum of kind of learning products that the world is demanding. And so certainly MOOCs are important, and I think degrees are important, and degree components are important. So I think that really it's a spectrum, and I think the economics of working with Coursera, given that so much of the economics are driven by this platform business model, are very different than the economics of a traditional OPM. where typically a university will outsource the entire thing. They'll say, like, look, we do our on-campus thing, you do the online thing, charge the same tuition. Like I said, the acquisition cost of degree students is typically, $10,000 to $15,000. That's a lot of tuition right there. We think that this model is more efficient and will provide both better access, but also, I think, a more, some universities want this and others are a little bit more reluctant, but I think fundamentally, online degrees will be a part of every single university within 5 to 10 years. I look at the fundamentals, I look at the learners, I look at the employers, I look at the economics, I look at the globalization. I just think it's going to be something that every university does as a matter of their core competence. It's not to say they're going to shut down, it's not to say the degrees are going away, it's not to say they're going to shut down their on-campus programs at all. But I think it's going to be a continuum of products, prices, and even online, offline.
So when Daphne came here, the learner base of Coursera was a little bit shy of 3 million. Mm-hmm. And today you have 35 million learners. Why is it that you don't have 500 million learners?
That is a really important question. I can only guess. I think that in the earlier stages, it's a combination of factors. Increasingly, a factor that it is not is the availability of devices and technology and connectivity to actually get access to it. That's one of the things I'm most thrilled about. I was in the Amazon, and there are villages with no running water and no electricity. They have mobile phones with they have solar panels, and they have radio towers up in the mountains. It's amazing the access that is now becoming available. So thankfully, that's not what it is. I think a lot of it is we're a startup company. Not everybody knows about Coursera. It takes a lot of money to create that kind of awareness. I think that many people say, hey, even if it's free, 11 hours is a long time to spend on something. Many parts of the population don't have even the prerequisites to participate in the kind of learning and teaching that's happening on Coursera. So I think more rudimentary content will be important. Language is one of the factors. We have 350 courses in Spanish. We have 215 courses in Russian, and we have subtitling on almost all the popular ones, but I think language is one of the obstacles. And to a large degree, I think the connection between taking these courses and the benefit it has on your life has not been strong enough for a lot of people who are busy and say, you know what, this is going to take a lot of time and effort. And so we're really working on trying to make them more convenient and accessible and linking more closely to the benefits that you'll get if you come onto Coursera and take these courses.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions?
I'm a faculty member in the business school.
Mm-hmm.
Coursera and edX were criticized in as much as the number of people starting MOOC who followed through was pretty low. But I get the sense that that's really part of your business model. To pour in a lot of people, top of whom some small number will actually go in and do the whole thing. So the more you can pour in fact, then the better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to. Yeah, the question was that sort of as a business model, and maybe also in terms of just the evidence for the value of the product being offered, a lot of folks who start a MOOC don't complete the MOOC. And many see that as, or have seen that as an indictment that says, people don't value this. What's interesting is if you look at completion rates at the course level for free learners, and it differs by domain. So the completion of a philosophy course is different than the completion of a data science course. The free learners, it's about 10% or so, but these are 11-hour courses. When you look, though, at how many people completed a lesson, so a course is usually made of 3 or 4 modules. Each module is made up of usually 3 or 4 lessons. Each lesson is about 45 minutes. Each lesson is made up of items, which are each about 5 to 10 minutes. So lesson completion rate is much higher. It's north of 50%, even among the free ones. For paying learners, the completion rates are above 50%. For enterprise corporate learners, the completion rates are more like 60 or 70%. This is getting closer to, oh, my employer wants me to learn this. If I do this, I'm going to get some benefit. Among degree students, our retention rates are above 90%. And that's, of course, a more intense level of effort and duration of time than anything. So I think it really gets back to your question, Suleiman, which is, what's in it for me if I invest all this time and energy and complete this? And you're right, a lot of the people who end up taking degrees didn't finish that course, but they said, yeah, I think I want to do this. So we're totally okay with people coming in for various pieces of these courses.
Okay. I grew up in China, and I remember I registered for university writing course before I came to the US because I want to be well prepared, and it's very exciting experience. I got lots of classmates actually from Canada, from US, so we can really talk to each other. But when I come to Columbia, I feel like in-person contact is really different from the online talking. So I wonder, is it possible in the future that Coursera can organize some activities that help organize the community, the learners community, to maybe some in-person activities?
Yeah. It's a great question. The answer is yes. So there's a continuum of experience where I would put at one end kind of the on-campus experience in terms of the level of social interaction, engagement with your colleagues. You saw in the degrees experience, it's not necessarily in the same place face-to-face, but it is live interaction with the faculty, with TAs, and with your classmates. So when we do hear from students in our degree programs, they say what you said, which is I met a lot of people from around the world, but their level of interaction and engagement was much higher than in MOOCs. In MOOCs, I do think it would be valuable to try to have regional meetups, almost like book clubs, if you will, kind of MOOC clubs for people who are in the same area. And I think that's something that we will be looking at more. We're kind of starting, if you will, at the high end of the product range where we know that the value and the accreditation requirements of having high engagement learning is necessary. The economics help to pay for it, but a lot of what we're learning in those more high engagement degree-like experiences, we plan to make available down the line to some of the less costly products, because that's a big part of it. You know, the MBA at Illinois, one of their big value propositions in the MBA program, even though they had that live interaction among just the degree students, they also have a number of their students are at parts of the curriculum in MOOCs because they want their students to learn with the rest of the world. And so they'll often submit assignments or have conversations with open course participants, even though they're in this more closed degree program. And we think there's a really big advantage to doing that. We think that, you know, community learning is not only important for shared interest, but a lot of people talk about soft skills. And what I think is fascinating, we talk about how data will play a role, it might be a little bit counterintuitive to think that once you have group projects in provisioned online workspaces with Google Docs, online computer programming experiments, we have live Zoom integration and Slack integration, we have a lot of peer assessments, peer feedback. We now have, the University of London is building into their degree experience, part of your grade will be based not only on participation, but also on how your peers said that you did in helping with group projects. We can see how responsive people are. We can look at the quality of student feedback to each other. And I think that to a large degree, people will be working in virtual spaces when they leave school. They might as well be learning in virtual spaces where they're at school. And we might even be able to get a pretty good sense for what someone's soft skills are by watching the way they've been collaborating and supporting their classmates during the learning experience in a way that's harder to measure, frankly, when you're on campus.
Thank you, sir. It seems like the online experience is getting better and better. Can you talk a little bit about credentialing? Like, what does Coursera's future? What do you think about that? How do you feel about improving that in the future? Because it feels like that's the piece. If you could corner the credentialing, you can make a big change.
Yeah. So credentials are interesting. I think about a sort of a value chain of our learning experience. There, at the bottom is kind of the content, and that content gets delivered in a learning experience with colleagues and interactive programming assignments and other neat stuff. The content delivered in a learning experience delivers competencies, knowledge and skills about how to do things. Those competencies, if you pass certain assessments, you can get a credential that says they actually know these kinds of things. And the value of the credential is largely based on the brand of the issuer and the perceived value of that credential by the employer. So when I think about credentials, I think about job market demand. There are times where the value of a credential is, I went to Stanford and that makes me feel good and I could talk to other people at Stanford, I have access to resources because of that. But a lot of it is, it helps me get a job or helps me improve in my career. So when I think about the credential market, a lot of what I think about is there are existing credentials like Ivy League degrees that are very, very valuable. And I mean, the demand in China, India, for Ivy League degrees. It's just huge. I think that those emerging credentials, I look at Udacity, I think about edX, I think about our master track, they're not going to be really valuable until the workplace decides that they're going to look a little bit more carefully or pay a little bit more or give an edge to someone who has that credential. And they won't do that unless they think that person knows more and is more effective at getting a job done and advancing the business interests than someone who got some other credential or no credential. So I think a lot of what the credential is going to be based on is the quality of people who earn the credential, as to some degree summarized by the issuer of such credential, but ultimately it's the job market that will determine whether these credentials are valuable. So we think working with employers is going to be a big part of building valuable credentials.
So a question here, then a question. Hi there. You touched on this a little bit, but I was wondering if you could go deeper. In the K-12 space, as the challenges in that area compound themselves and as they start to dabble in the online and blended worlds, have you done any partnership work with the K-12 ecosystem itself, more than just a bridge to college?
It's something that I thought about before I took the job at Coursera. I now get to run in Edtech circles, which is kind of fun. I had dinner in San Diego a few months ago with someone who's the CEO of one of the leading K-12 Edtech players. And he said, Jeff, the best thing you ever did was stay out of the K-12 space. So unfortunately, it's extremely important, it's extremely challenging. One of the big differences among a few between K-12 and college, and especially post-college, is the value of an adult learning on Coursera can be driven by, in a sense, compensated by an employer who will pay more for it. The value, so it's much more clear and immediate and quantifiable. The value to educating young people who won't be job ready for a long time, and ultimately the value of that education will be a societal benefit shared by all and difficult to measure. Among decision makers, decision-making K-12 is not straightforward. And who pays for it? When the social benefit is over a long period of time and the benefit and the cost of not having that is shared by many, there's just not a very tight link between the value that is, the importance and value of doing it and the ability as a business to grow. So I unfortunately think it's a very, very difficult business. And to answer your question, I'm sorry it's taken me so long. We haven't done that much. And ideally, maybe there's something we can do through Coursera for Partners, where if our universities or if our schools of education want to start doing things to probably teach teachers how to provide better types of education. I could see that our partners in schools of education might use our platform to teach teachers that might ultimately trickle down to K-12. That's how I hope that maybe we could help.
Thank you for the presentation. It was great. I just have a question about your profit sharing with universities and colleges. And if you can just generally talk about what is the strategy there.
Yeah, it's quite simple. We only have one method of earning revenue at Coursera, which is to charge for those learning products. Many of them we still give away for free. It was something that was important, I think, as part of the mission of Coursera. It remains important as part of our business model, frankly. We're not going to stop doing that because it's working pretty well. The way the economics work, essentially, if you blend it all together, about half of what learners pay goes to our partners. It's more, sometimes it's more here, sometimes it's less here, but overall, it's about half of what learners pay go to our partners. So in a sense, if you ever, if we ever end up becoming a public company and people read all of our financial statements, essentially half of that is going to be the economics that universities are getting.
And I will unfortunately have to conclude by asking you a question, which builds on what you just said.
Yeah.
How much pressure are you getting from your VCs for an exit, including an IPO?
Yeah, it's not the first time I've been asked. My last company, I was the first employee. It took 12 years before we went public. We ended up going public, and I was the CEO for 5 years, so I certainly have been through that. Not a lot of pressure, almost at all. There are certain types of opportunities, and if you look at Airbnb, and you look at Uber, and you look at Lyft, and a lot of the big platform plays, there's such a big opportunity that investors say, now's not necessarily the time. Now, if it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do. But But oftentimes, there's a value in kind of figuring out more of your business model and continuing to grow. So it is a possibility, perhaps a likelihood at some point, and I don't feel a ton of urgency right now, but who knows?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to strengthening our partnership with Coursera and also welcoming you in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Alan.